Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. So this actually is a Christmas present from my beloved mother, who got me a box of the Dogs of Gullett Cove D&D miniatures as part of a stocking filler last Christmas, and only now I've gotten around to painting them. So yep, let's begin. So just doing the skin first. So first thing I did before I even put paint on the model was look up photos of dogs. So this dog in particular is a Basset Hound, according to the box. Bartholomew, the gloomy Basset Hound Bard. And yeah, so just so I had an idea for the kind of patterns that I'd be working with, the first thing I did was I looked up some pictures of some cute little Basset Hounds on the internet to get an idea for what I'm supposed to be painting. Just to, reacquaint myself with how they look in general, just taking a moment to pay particular attention to where all of the patterns and spots are, etc. Alright, so the first thing I did was basically go into Google image search and just see what's there. Saved a couple of the images to my drive just so I'd quickly had them on hand, just as a quick reference for when I was actually putting paint on the miniature. So it's I don't mention this as much as I probably should, but this is a fairly standard part of my process. If I'm painting something which is grounded in reality, where I'm not just making it all up, I'll generally find photos of it on the internet and just download them. It's a good way of just just quickly reacquainting yourself with what they look like and the kind of colours you'll be expecting to use, and also for colour matching. Now, I find this especially important with uniforms and military equipment. So to get to the specifics of the colour, I'm using birch as a base coat for the model. Now, since it's a fairly white colour, it'll take many thin coats to go on, so you'll see a lot of that going on. Basically, the plan is just to keep working at it until the white is more or less even and completely covers any of the oversplash from doing the base previously. Okay, so now for the patterning. So as you saw from the reference photos I was using, I'm following them fairly loosely. Just general ideas for where the colors are supposed to go, which is sort of in a patch around the eyes and the ears, and some generic spots all over the coat. I think that's a technical term. I don't know. I don't know dogs, even though I grew up with them, I guess. Yeah, it's just a fairly simple process. At this stage, the paint is just going on pretty flat. I'm mostly doing this to try and block out the colors to get an idea for where it's meant to go. Now, I think, just as a spoiler for the end, I don't think I'm fully happy with this process, and painting animals like this is not something I'm really good at. What I need to work on is trying to give the impression of texture in my highlighting, I think. We'll see a bit more of that going forward, but yeah, it's definitely because you want to sell the illusion of fur rather than just paint it on flat, because if you paint it on flat, it just looks like, a Chuck E. Cheese like statue of a Basset Hound. That's not what we're aiming for. It's a dog has fur. That's the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, so it's pretty simple matter just getting the paint down. So let's talk about other things. Yeah, by the time you've reached this video, I have been trying to increase the production values of this entire little pathetic hobby of mine. So the backgrounds are going to stay for doing these single projects, as is the custom thumbnails. When I say custom, like built thumbnails, I suppose. So I'm just generally trying to improve the quality of this whole operation. Like, I'm never going to be an amazing painter, and I'm also never going to be an amazing YouTuber, but I'm just trying to get the look and feel of everything I do a little more pleasant, a little more professional, so I hope the effort is appreciated. Anyway, so moving on, I will, once the colours are blocked down, as you can see I'm putting on a wash. So this is my usual mixture of glaze medium and a colour I like. I think this one is not a black, but a very dark grey from scale 75. Like I should mention at the top of each video, most of the paints, unless I specify otherwise, are probably going to be scale 75 at this point, unless I'm doing something not really miniatures related. I used to use a lot of game color, but now that they're changing up the complete line, it's going to be hard to get replacements, and honestly, for singles we're trying to look good, scale 75 is just perfect. Anyway, so now that we have washed down, we're just going to restore the colors a little bit and try and build up that shading. So it's just a matter of putting the color down and trying to leave that dark line between the leather armor harness and the rest of it. And this goes for the, birch as well. One thing I should mention about this kit is that it is a box of 5 resin cast miniatures. They're all different breeds of dogs, so if you're the kind of person who likes, that sort of cutesy kitsch kind of thing, especially for your, D&D campaigns, this is definitely the kit for you. The kit itself is from Steamforged Games, and yeah, I've already painted the cats version of these, to be honest. I picked them up on a whim some time ago, because I kind of like, these days I like cats a lot more than I like dogs, so I felt like it. And yeah, a lot of fun to paint for sure, but honestly, I think I kind of do just prefer people though in the final evaluation. I'm just more used to it. I find it more engaging, and the having to research what each dog looks like kind of just slows me down a little bit. I don't know. I just prefer adventurers, I guess. So here I think I'm putting on the highlights now, and I'm being fairly subtle. So this is just white, and what I'm trying to do is sort of like scuff the highlights on, because if you can sort of see it, I'm sort of like bumping the brush as I apply the highlights to try and sort of get that texture going, to give the impression that there's hair overlapping, and I suppose this is the one advantage where maybe having a slightly thicker paint could help, because the impression of brushstrokes might actually be a good thing if you use it right. It'll give the impression of a rough surface, which is kind of ultimately at the scale what a fur animal and what the coat of an animal is. One thing else I should mention about Steamforged Games is that they're a relatively, well, actually they're not a new company at this point, they've been around for a while, but they're unique in that they do a lot of a bit more, for lack of a better word, very normie D&D stuff. They got first started with doing the Vox Machina characters from both seasons of Critical Role, as I understand. Now, Critical Role is definitely not my thing, it's just, yeah, I kind of prefer actual role-playing games to Let's Plays, but people love it, so who am I to say what people can and cannot like? But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, they're new to the market with this particular, well, not new obviously, it's just that's what they kind of, I don't know if they really got big doing it, but they it's definitely one of their, I think, their flagship products. Anyway, so that's the fur done, so just onto the rest of it. We're just gonna highlight his cute little nose, well, not highlight, base coat his cute little nose in black, and just work on the other features of the miniature ever so slowly. The one disadvantage about this approach in filming is that you can't really see me like mucking around getting colors ready and the like. Yep, there's me bumping the camera again. The reason why that happens is like I'm sort of like hunched around it and just trying to make sure I keep my work in shot. Yeah, so another thing I'm trying to do a bit more is have a bit more of a conversational tone with this sort of thing. Just, oh yep, highlighting, there we go. It's a very simple miniature, honestly. This, it in terms of painting time, if I wanted to sit down and do it, it'd get done pretty quick. The only real time sink for these sorts of things is the drying time for the wash, because the way I do it, the wash often takes a full day to dry. But that's fine, because I've got plenty of other things to do with my life. So I can let it sit for a while. But yes, a conversational tone. Yeah. I guess I'm just kind of at the point where I'm just telling you how I paint over and over again, and it's not really I'm not really telling you anything that's particularly new. Like, I'll do what I can, but yeah, if you're still watching this, you probably have already know what I'm talking about, because my techniques don't change up too much these days unless I'm trying to deliberately do something new. So I'm quite happy to talk about like tangentially related things as well while we're doing this. We're painting our little miniatures here. So the leather armor harness thing is, I'm just painting that in a red leather, and this is just the base coat stage of it. So it's, again, you know, the most basic of all of processes that need to get done. Yeah, I guess one problem I had with these miniatures is that, actually I kind of had this problem with a lot of medieval miniatures, is that I have trouble sometimes telling when one bit of clothing ends and another begins. It's especially true for like complicated armor and overlapping bits and pieces. I sometimes genuinely find it hard to see if that's if, you know, a bit of clothing separated by being layered over by something else is a separate bit of clothing or part of the same. But, you know, it just takes practice, and often if I sit there and contemplate a miniature for a while, that's what I'm doing in the back of my brain. Trying to figure out exactly how the clothes works. And again, the internet will always be a friend with this sort of thing, because, you know, you can look up the miniature and see how other people have painted it, and if they've got some decent high-resolution photos, you can get some clues. People do, but I don't do myself, is often people will just undercoat a miniature first thing and then give it a undercoat a miniature, then give it a dark line wash like Nuln Oil or something to just bring out the detail in sharp relief. It does make it easier to see where all of the detail on the miniature lies, and could serve as a guide for painting. So, just while we're waiting on, I don't think we're waiting on anything to dry here, but the beret of our little Basset Hound is going to be black, but I'm going to do this my usual method, which is paint with a highlight, then wash over with the with a black wash, especially in my heavy glazed medium black wash. That really does darken it down, but leaves a bit of the grey showing through, and then re-highlight the sharpest edges. Not that it's a beret, like berets by definition aren't very sharp unless they get creased in some way, but honestly then not really on this miniature. Oh, here's the wash. So yeah, so you've heard me do it dozens of times by now. Black wash, glazed medium, just put it on, expect to wait, you know, a day for it to dry. Now, one thing I try to be careful doing with this process is making sure I keep the wash only on the parts I wish to shade, but also trying to let a little bit of it on the flow over onto the other surface, like around the collar of the jacket thing. I just want to accentuate any dark lines that are there to try and, you know, separate the miniature into its constituent parts from a color perspective. And there we go. As I mentioned previously, that's the black glaze wash. I should invent it as my own technique, like slap chop or whatever the hell it is. Yeah, a glaze wash. That's trademark. That's mine now. So yeah, right here I've just, you know, obviously let it dry for probably overnight, or I think at this point I was neck deep in video games again, so I let it go for a lot longer, and now I'm working on it again. So yeah, just re-establishing the base coats after the washer dried, just to get that nice red leather going. And then you've got that sort of like very subtle shading, which I really like. I like it far more than the harsh shading you get with a lot of the Games Workshop washes. So that's why generally, if I'm painting miniatures with scale 75, I will use this technique because I kind of think the effect looks much, much better. And of course, the eyes. There's me screwing up my first attempt at the eyes. I think for this miniature, and at the time of recording, I'm in the process of painting the rest of them that came in this box set. I kind of think the eyes are not particularly deep. I mean, it's hard to do at this scale, so it's forgivable, but my first attempt, I missed the eye by a big way. So what I did was just, like, immediately realised my mistake, went in and just washed the surface to break up the white paint. And we'll come back and try again in a bit. So I think I'm putting on some highlights there. Yep, definitely putting on some highlights. Just trying to get those edges going on the leather. Now, I think if, in retrospect, I might have tried to beat this leather up a little bit more by working the highlights all the way up to the whites to make it look like it was frayed a bit. But I don't know, it's kind of like, I think the stage I got it to has a very comic book look, which kind of suits the subject matter. I mean, a barred dog, it's ridiculous, right? You'd only hear about it in, like, children's fairy tales. So I think leaving realism out of my painting process in this situation is kind of acceptable. As always, contemplating the miniature while deciding what my next move is. Just, you know, turning it over and over in your hands, just looking at the shapes and wondering what you're going to do next. And apparently it's the eyes. We're going back in for real this time, folks. So yep, clearly much happier with that attempt. So I'm just going to leave it as is, and at this scale, and considering my own, like, IRL eyes are not good, I'm just going to stick to usual simple wargame eyes. White and black, nothing fancy. Oh, actually, no, the trick with eyes is you don't want to use stark white and dark black. It makes the miniatures look surprised. You want to go a slightly off-white, or mix in a little bit of the base flesh tone, and use a dark grey, I think, to make it look a little less, blah. So, this is getting to the stage of the miniature when a lot of the larger details are done, and now it is time to fill out all of the smaller, minor details, like the bits and pieces of Adventurer's Ephemera on the harness. I'm not going to say pack, because how does that honestly make sense on that miniature? It's more like, you know, it's a fantasy canine, like, bomb disposal harness with gear that poor creature has no hope of using, but, you know, hey, it's fantasy, whatever. So yep, just doing the bedroll, just, you know, I picked basically a random colour from my scale 75 set and just rolled with it. So this is a steel blue, very, it's a somber, I think, colour, and I think it kind of doesn't immediately overwhelm the miniature, which is what I'm aiming for. Okay, so there's also some scroll work. Oh yeah, ignore that. That is, well, was the effect of my camera doing something very strange. I genuinely don't know what happened there. I lost a bunch of footage, but honestly, I was just base coating those scrolls with an off-white color. nothing fancy at all. Anyway, where was I? Ah, yes. So I've been thinking about my process as well, and I will be trying to record fairly regularly, and will be scheduling my videos to go out on a fortnightly basis. That's once every 2 weeks, generally on the Friday of the off week. So yeah, it's basically I think a good compromise between allowing myself to indulge my other hobbies and getting a steady stream of delicious content, if for those of you who miraculously are listening to this at this point, out to your eyes and ear holes. Anyway, so there's feathers on this miniature. So for those of you who have seen my the Rogue Trader video, I think a couple of fortnights back at this point, I'm going to do the feathers using exactly the same method. Really going to try and push those highlights and make those feathers vibrant, because I just think that I was quite surprised when I pulled that off the first time, and I'm quite happy to try and repeat the effect as best I can. So just like with the birch colour going on, that scroll work just takes its time to layer up to white. It's, especially over a dark colour such as that leather. It's just an unfortunate, fact of painting is to get those whites. You just require many base coats. 3 to 4 is probably minimal. Though in reality, you just keep painting until it's smooth. No way around it. Anyway, so for these bits of ephemera, am I washing yet? I don't know. But yeah, I will be putting a wash on those scrolls and the bedroll, a blue and a brown respectively. And I'll be relayering the colours at a later point. Yeah. Oh, and there's also a flask on the harness somewhere, so that's what I'm painting the white as, painting white down there. Flasks on fantasy miniatures are kind of my bugbear, because like every time I see one, it's like, oh great, I should be painting this clear, so that means I'm gonna have to try and simulate liquid in it. It's just a pain. So lately I've kind of been painting a solid color bottles just to avoid having to try and get the effect working, which I don't think I can reliably pull off yet. Like, there are better painters than me that can reliably do it. I'm not there. I doubt I will be. And as promised, there's the wash going on over the scrolls. So, staring at the dog's ass at this point. I'm sorry about that, but I assume what I'm doing is getting the wash colour for the bedroll together. Yep, there we go. That's just a darker blue with my glaze washing method. Now I had a bit of a problem here where the glaze wash, God, I'm using that unironically now, damn me, where the glaze wash sort of blended into the ran into the scrolls, which I'd already done another glaze wash with, so the one color got on the other, and I realized that fact at this point, and I just decided I'll just wait for it to dry and try and fix the entire situation at a later point once the colours are dry. And as promised, feathers. All I'm doing is I have a hard time catching the individual fibres of the feather. So what I'm doing is I'm just like painting lines roughly along from the stem to the tips of the feathers, gradually building up those colours, eventually going all the way to like vibrant yellows and oranges. To just give that, extreme interest and, colour transition, which I think looks really good on feathers. Same thing for the green. I'm practically working all the way up to like a very, very almost not yellow green. It's probably a whitish green. I don't remember. Either way, suffice to say, it gets there's a pretty stark color transition between that initial base coat and the final highlight tips. Now, one thing that I have not even touched yet, that you can still see the white primer showing through, are some of the metallics on this model. And thankfully there aren't many, but, you know, as per usual, I am waiting for a particular stage to do them, so I can do the metallics all in one go, due to the nature of them. Oops, sorry about that. Bumping the camera a bit because I'm a klutz. Again, one of those facts of my painting talent, which is always going to probably kneecap the quality I can achieve with these with this hobby. Anyway, what I do? Oh, yep. So that was just me cleaning up after I bumped the miniature with my brush a bit, I think. It happens. So we can start to see those vibrant colors on the feathers coming through, like basically painting smaller orange stripes over the like slightly the lighter red mid-tone, for lack of a better term. I'm not washing these feathers, I am just using almost pure layering to achieve this. Yeah. And of course the actual stem of the feather, I'm just painting a light tan color to, you know, just point out that there is in fact a stem in there. I don't know if it's accurate, but I kind of like the look. I should probably go and Google some photos of feathers to find out one way or the other, but couldn't be bothered at the time. I'm not going to be bothered now. So, that bottle, actually no, not that bottle, sorry. Yeah, there's a stopper on the bottle. I just painted a generic, like, light off-white color to, you know, differentiate it from the actual material of the bottle. Nothing too fancy, just a moment ago. So, that's, as I mentioned previously, the point where I'm trying to fix up the how some of the blue shading ran into the that little gap between those two scrolls. So I'm just basically all I've done is just painted some brown lines into it to cover up the blue a bit. And obviously now that we've the wash there is fully dried, just restoring the white, evening it out, and leaving the glaze washing shade in the deeper recesses. Same deal with the bedroll, just, you know, putting that mid-tone back down, leaving the darker bits, the darker shade. The shades aren't dramatic, but, you know, they do the job, and I wasn't really willing to go back and redo it at this point. I think the trick with the glaze washing method, though, is to aim for a real dark color, because that glaze medium will basically do what it says on the tin and make it a glaze. So you really need that darker pigment to run into the deeper crevices to give anything a bit more of a definitive impression of color. So yep, definitely on the home stretch though. I don't remember if I actually painted the metals in this. Who knows? We'll wait and see. Surely I must have, because I think that's all of the base colours down. I think we must be getting to the metals at some point. Probably the next transition. Gotta love this. Like, I record the video a long time after the fact, and I only get to editing like maybe a week or so later, so every time I record one of these things, it's like, you've probably heard it by now, like, what the hell was I doing at that time? Anyway. So yeah, definitely in the contemplating the miniature stage. Okay, so definitely getting on towards completion now, so I'm black rimming the base, as I am one to do. Basically using my usual Vallejo model color black rather than the scale color black. Just put it down and let it dry. And as I was worrying about earlier, the metals. It is a simple process, and I am not doing too much not doing anything fancy for them. Just put down some gold to represent the hilt of the dog's saber. What a ridiculous phrase. And, you know, it's going to take a couple of coats, but it's going down. Oh, and also there are some like buttons and stuff and clasps on the miniature. I'm just going to paint a couple of dots of silver to represent a button. Don't even really need to highlight them, just the glint of silver is the highlight basically. And obviously, as I mentioned, and of course washing it, so I'm using a reddish brown color to provide some shade and patina to the gold metallics. And once it's down, we'll let it dry. And then relayering the gold with mid-tone. Though I think I overdid it on a little tiny clasp there, and that's me just putting down just a smidge more shade around that little sticky outy bit. I don't know what it's called. Yeah, and we're pretty much done. That's our dog adventurer. All painted. I said all painted. And there's the final spinning thing. Yeah, I gotta say, I didn't really pick this subject matter, it picked me. Obviously it was a gift and I was going to get around to doing it eventually, and it's done. So, yep, I don't paint this sort of thing often, and one thing I have been trying to do as a painter is challenge myself to subject matter I don't normally do, so less men with guns and armoured vehicles and more cute little adventurers, adventure animals, I suppose. Though, to be fair, I kind of prefer... I do paint a lot of human adventurers as well. Anyway, that's pretty much it. So I do have other things coming down the line. I'm working out how I'm going to do some airbrush recording properly. I've done it in the past, but kind of want to get more detail in. And I might do a scale model paint through from start to finish if I can... well, if my current attempt doesn't go bad like my last one did, unfortunately. So anyway, I think that's pretty much it for this video. So if you enjoyed this, great. Again, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe or anything. I gain no material benefit for doing so, apart from the satisfaction of seeing my numbers go up, which, you know, is not as satisfying as it used to be, what with the internet slowly decaying all around us anyway, and the knowledge that I'm just feeding the evil YouTube content mill. Anyway, that is pretty much it. If you made it this far, congratulations, and I hope you got something out of this, and I wish you best of luck with your own painting endeavours. Farewell.